It's just, isn't it amazing that we have this connection? And no matter where you are, if you meet another saxophone player, there's something you can talk about, whether it's reeds, mouthpieces, ligatures, altissimo fingerings, how terrible certain notes are. Kenny. Hi there, welcome along to today's vlog. Now today's vlog is a very special day because February the 18th marks 30 years to the day since I got my very first saxophone, and a Matti tenor saxophone. It was made in Czechoslovakia. The country didn't exist about 6 months after I started playing the saxophone. But if you can cast your minds back to February 1991, those of you who can, some of you won't be able to because you weren't born then. There was no smartphones, there was no internet, there were, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War was still raging at the time, that the IRA had tried to take out the British cabinet. There was loads and loads of things that the world seemed very, very different than what it looks like today, a lot bigger. And I remember I was very fortunate, I've said this before in previous vlogs. If you're not sure, go and watch this vlog that I made about my first music teacher, Terry Roberts. He was the deputy head teacher at my primary school, and Terry, for 35 years, I think, every single lunchtime and for an hour after school on a Friday, would hold the school band. Terry's not a professional musician himself, he's just a very passionate amateur. And, the saxophone has led me to meet so many different people, so many different characters. It's been a fantastic love affair. And if you'll go with me just for a few minutes today, I just want to recap some of my love affair with the saxophone. So how did I end up on the saxophone? Well, I was playing clarinet beforehand. My dad had played clarinet growing up. My dad was in a number of bands in the 70s and 80s with some rather terrible names, Through a Glass Darkly and Purple on the Storm. They were the names of the two that I can remember. But my dad's band used to always win the Battle of the Bands in Blackpool. They'd always win it year after year after year. My dad was playing bass, and then they'd go through to the finals in Manchester for the Northwest Regional Finals. And every year my dad would say they would lose to a band that had a saxophone player. The problem was that was the end of the 80s, and when has the saxophone been back popular in pop music since? I don't think it has. I missed the gap there. It kind of came back round and has never really been back into supreme popularity since. But I started on clarinet. I didn't really take to the clarinet. And those of you who have struggled and maybe are not musicians at the moment, I'll let you in on a little secret. I used to mime some of the third clarinet parts in the wind band at Stanley County Primary School. But when I got that tenor saxophone, I remember my dad used to have these conversations with Terry Roberts about, do you really need a tenor sax? Really need a tenor sax. And so we bought a Matti tenor saxophone. It cost £495 in 1991. So inflation adjusted, I'd asked a couple of friends a few years ago, that's well over £1,000. And the beauty is today, if you're going to spend £1,000 on a saxophone, you're going to get a pretty decent instrument. This Matti was not a pretty decent instrument at all. It was pretty cumbersome, it didn't look great. Sadly, around the neck of a 9-year-old, soon to be 10-year-old, it got whacked, it got hit, it got dents in it. I remember being told off for having dents in the, in kind of the bottom of the bow section. But I loved it, and I loved playing it. And the first ever piece I remember playing, we went away for my parents and some friends had rented this big house near Lancaster called Littledale Hall, and I remember going up and it was me, my brother and my sister having my saxophone splayed across the three of us in the back of the car, my brother and sister already complaining about me playing the saxophone. And we got up to Littledale and I remember vividly playing Pink Panther meets Batman. The Pink Panther meets Batman was the first piece I remember really playing, because I remember being told by Mr. Bonney, who was our peripatetic teacher, that, hey, you know, the Pink Panther is on tenor saxophone. I was the only tenor saxophone player in the school at the time, and so it was like, right, I need to learn to play the Pink Panther well. But it wasn't just in school. In our church, Bill Barrow was a saxophone player. He'd trained in the Royal Northern College of Music when he was younger. I think he was working as a solicitor by then, but picking up a lot of gigs in the local area. And Bill used to play saxophone and clarinet in the church services most weeks, and I remember listening out and kind of, you know, he'd play nice pentatonic type licks alongside some of the more modern songs that were in the church, sometimes over the hymns as well, but more often than not he was sort of playing over the modern songs, and that caught my ear, and I I wanted to emulate what Bill was doing. I wanted to get up there and play. And I was very, very fortunate that when I was just a year later, in 1992, as you're going to see in this footage here, I was playing with Bill and some of his friends at a fundraiser, I think it was. This was something up in Lancaster, murdering Watermelon Man maybe at this point, but there you go. There's a little bit of embarrassing footage for me in a terrible shell suit. Age 10 at that point. I'd only been playing just over a year at that point, so, you know, kind of plodding along. And then I was in the school band, did quite well, you know, was picking it up. Started getting lessons when I was just before my 11th birthday with Ray Wilkes, and that struck up a friendship which I've spoken about many, many times, and particularly in this vlog from a few years ago talking about Ray. And I was just smitten by it. I just got the bug. Every time there was a saxophone on the telly or a saxophone on a recording, I wanted to hear it. Even now when I hear a saxophone, it's still there. You know, even now when, you know, people hear a dance record or anything, there's a sax player, you know, they go, you know, people who, my friends who I grew up with who aren't necessarily saxophone players themselves. And the saxophone has led me to have friends across the world, but also close at home. My best friend, Simon, who was best man at my wedding and we're still best friends to this day, I was best man for him at his wedding. Here is the two of us playing together in a concert. This is in 1998, a few years later, but we were in at primary school together, and we played in all the student ensembles growing through high school. We went to different high schools, and I always remember that Simon and I always had this nice trade-off in particularly in the jazz band, at the county jazz band, because Simon was a very good sight reader and I was pretty good at soloing. So what tended to happen is I took all the solos and I just listened to Simon in terms of how I should phrase anything. That problem was with that, it made me quite lazy at sight reading, and something I had to address later on. But by the time I got to 16, I was able to upgrade my saxophone. So I upgraded, got rid of the Amati and got hold of a Yamaha 62. And this was the horn that really sort of got me going. This was the horn I had when I first started picking up professional gigs, age 16, whether it was in the Tower Circus at Blackpool, in the ballrooms at Blackpool, and then playing with the Blues Brothers band. That was the Yamaha 62 that I played on. I think by the time of my 21st birthday, I missed something in 1992. I saved up my birthday money and Ray got me an Otto Link mouthpiece, a 6-star. I remember playing on that. I remember being so proud when a guy who had come in to do some work with our primary school band, that guy's got a Link. But I was never allowed to take the Link into primary school. Only for concerts and only for special occasions was I allowed to take that very expensive mouthpiece in. But that Yamaha 62, and with that Link, got me through an awful lot of gigs. I reckon I've averaged it out once. I think I did about 400 gigs from the age of 16 to the age of 20 on that Yamaha 62 with my Link, and I just played, and I just loved playing. I didn't practice an awful lot by that time, I've got to admit. Things like football, girls, rugby, cricket, they tended to be my priority at that time, but I still played my music. I do remember my dad saying to me once, look son, you're not going to be a professional sportsman, but you just might be a professional musician if you do some practice. But I didn't want to hear that. I mean, you know, it wasn't cool at that time to be a musician. And I didn't necessarily have that strength of character. And if you're watching this and you are at school, you know, keep going with it. Keep prioritizing your practice. It's really, really important. Yes, prioritize things like fitness and sport and friendships. That's really, really important. But I've got to say, as I said earlier on, I have made so many friends, not only just locally, but friends across the world. And the community we have on this channel now is through me playing the saxophone and through you playing the saxophone. So it's been a great thing. This piece of metal, this piece of brass invented by a Belgian guy, it's just, isn't it amazing that we have this connection? And you know, no matter where you are, if you meet another saxophone player, there's something you can talk about, whether it's reeds, mouthpieces, ligatures, altissimo fingerings, how terrible certain notes are. Kenny. Now, when I was at sixth form, I went to the Blackpool Sixth Form College, which had a reputation of having an excellent big band, excellent jazz band, and we also had a sax quartet. And I made a beeline for the music room almost on about my third day there to make sure I could get hold of the Yanagasawa soprano. I wanted to be able to play soprano. I'd seen Branford playing soprano, obviously Coltrane and those guys, and I wanted to be able to play the soprano and tenor sax. That was one of my goals, was to get hold of that soprano sax. So I played on that Yanagasawa for 2 years. It basically never left my side, and I really, really loved playing the soprano. I loved the way actually the soprano lent its way to more pop music, especially if I was playing with the church or with the church youth group. I found that the soprano just gave me different colours that I could play, different colours that tended to match, and I got into a stage at that point of being quite obsessed about Branford's pop stuff with Sting and learning all those solos, transcribing them as best I could at the time. Now, I've mentioned more about mouthpieces in this vlog, but I'm more talking about my saxophones, all my saxophones really. Now, I hadn't really played alto until I was in my 20s. I started getting calls for sessions and for gigs that needed an alto, so a few times I borrowed a friend's alto, but then I realised that I needed to get my own. And I remember I got an Elcott. I got a black and gold one. I think I'd seen Courtney Pine around about this time, and I was like, oh, I've got to get a black and gold saxophone. So I got a black and gold Elcott alto and also a black and gold Elcott soprano. They were okay. They did the job. They weren't the greatest thing in the world, but they did the job. And then in 2003, I upgraded my alto to a Yamaha 62, and it's a story I love to tell people, in that with that Yamaha alto, I bought it at, I think, £900, and then I sold it 3 years later for 700 and no, even less than that. I think it cost me £15 to own that Yamaha alto for 3 years. In 2005, I got rid of the Yamaha and I got my Selmer balanced action tenor. I miss that horn. I know where it is. I know roughly where it is. If you've got that horn, you know, I'll have it back one day. But I got my balanced action, and I love that horn. Made a number of recordings on it, a lot of live gigs. But that lasted me through to 2011. I did my college stuff on that, but then I found this one. This is my 5-digit Mark 6, 1955, December the 19th, 1955. This was finished, so they tell me at Selmer. And yeah, I've now owned this horn. It'll be coming up to 10 years this November, and this is the best horn I've ever played for me. It gives me exactly the sound I want. Yeah, there's faults with it. Yeah, there's problems with it. But it is the sax that is making my sound, and is the sound that I want. And I guess the kind of argument is, this is the horn. Woo. Even now, he says, not putting it correctly back on the stand, that I've now owned for the longest period of time, because I was looking at this sheet of paper. 91 to 97, I had my Matty. 97 to 2005, had the Yamaha. 2005 2011, the balanced action. 2011 to today, I've had that Mark 6. Now, that's my tenor journey. On my altos, I've had various different altos. As I say, got rid of that Yamaha 62. Then I think I ended up then getting another Yamaha after that, and then the Yanagasawas that I'm now playing on there, signed a deal with Yanagasawa. I don't think I've owned other ones. Sopranos, yeah, after got rid of the Elcott, got a 991, loved that to bits. Have the 992, never getting another soprano. For now, anyway, they're just out of this world sopranos. But that's saxophones, that's the actual instruments. But being a saxophone player for 30 years, as I say, has taken me all over the world and opened doors. And I've played in stages, I've played, played at places like St Paul's Cathedral. I would never have got the chance to have done something in St Paul's Cathedral had I not been a saxophone player. So I guess to all my saxophone playing brothers and sisters, keep going with it. And tell me your story below in the comments section, and maybe make your own video. Tell me what you love about the saxophone. What is it that's kept your love affair going? And as I enter the 4th decade of playing the saxophone, I'm looking forward to sitting down here in another 10 years time and telling you about 40 years of the saxophone, where I've got to with it, what I've been doing. And I'm just really, really, really looking forward to what me and these instruments are going to be doing in the next 10 years.